yes, I want it to go bigger. Yes, I want to break through. But if it doesn't, I still believe that I made quality work, and I'm okay with that.
He's an actor, comedian, monologist, cabaret performer, and gay supremacist.
Today's guest is the self-proclaimed apocalypsist, David Mills.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of. David Mills is here with us on Tuesday, November 5th at 6:55 p.m. Now,
what's going on tonight? Anything important?
Nothing going on around here, that's for sure.
We don't know when this thing's going to be heard, so we might have to do a little pickup. David might just send us a little voicemail or something in the next day or 12, letting us know if his outlook has changed. Because tonight, people... is a big presidential election. Okay, that's we're doing this for you, and we're doing it. It's a big night, but we feel it's important to share the stories of artists and introduce you to artists. So we're doing this tonight for you.
We're doing this for me because otherwise I would be going crazy right now. I'm not going to lie.
I have
it's
my
really that
shot
simple.
glass ready for the second this fucking thing is over. And by fucking thing, I mean this interview, not...
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But the thing is, David Mills, comedian, writer, actor, raconteur, you are attracted to apocalyptic things. So tell us, does this fan your flame, or does it, what? Yeah, David's very into apocalyptic themes.
I'm an apocalypsist.
Oh, you went from gay supremacist to apocalypsist?
Yes, not by choice. I just am that. I've just always sort of felt the world is coming to an end. I see it around every corner. Yeah. So on one level, this feels really charged and kind of thrilling. I'm thrilled on one level, but on another level, it feels like every day feels like this to me. I feel like it's all coming to an end every day. So this is just another one.
Have you always been this gloomy and doomy?
I don't know. I think the darkness has always been my place of where I start everything. I always sort of start in the darkness.
But you're not dark. That's what's so weird, because you don't come off that way at all. Is it a choice as an artist?
It's his secret light. It's like David's got this, you own this other person inside of you that is like this dark, seedy person, this dark, apocalyptic, this dark. But the person who you present as, if I might steal a phrase from the current vernacular, is someone who's like happy-go-lucky, gonna just fly on the entrails of the wind, just it's a fascinating duality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like gloomy. I think I prefer kind of pessimistic. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Is it because pessimistic is more active? Because gloomy is just very passive.
Well, what I really have always thought is pessimists are just disappointed idealists, right?
Yeah.
I have very high ideals. I want the best, but I don't believe it's ever coming to fruition, or I'm suspicious that it can ever come to fruition. So I'm a skeptic, and I'm very skeptical of positivity and happiness and all that. People who present that, they always get my hackles up a little bit. You know what I mean?
I'm the same way, yeah, because I'm like, I don't believe that's possible to be that happy.
I don't buy it.
Wow, I'm so glad you saw through my optimism and realized underneath was just...
But it's amazing how that way of being, having a kind of darkness, interior darkness, attracts you to all sorts of people. Lots of good people have that exact thing. Do you know what I mean? I think the bad people with bad intentions, their darkness is different from mine. I have good intentions. I just don't see them played out in the world around me. So I don't know. I'm trying to explore it more. I have to be honest, in my work.
Are you trying to explore the root of it, or explore or mining it?
I'm mining it, the expression of it.
I mean, I think it's very real. I think that you're coming from a place of reality. I'm a hope junkie. I've always been a hope junkie.
I also love hope.
But I also, as I've gotten older, I've gotten used to the fact that there's just everything in life, and that is nature.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating when you think about audiences and how they relate to that. The people who need the happy, they need the Hollywood film kind of thing
Yes.
versus
People who
people
like
who,
La La Land. Yes, those
yeah.
people.
But then there's the kind of work that you do. And I think that's what the whole alt cabaret vibe is about, is it presents more of a realistic view of what's happening in the world. And I think it's why it attracts so many diverse performers.
David, tell us what the alt cabaret vibe is, since you're the president of it. I mean, at this point.
Well, Carol Lipnick is the president of alt cabaret, is she
Oh.
not?
I think it's such a broad term, and there's so many of us under that umbrella that it feels like anyone who just doesn't do the America Songbook or American
Right.
Songbook is classified as alt cabaret.
Also,
Do you know?
Carol Lipnick is not listening to this podcast, so I don't know why you would.
What do you mean she's not listening to this podcast?
I mean,
I'm saying this so that when Carol's listening to this happens, David.
This is all the time. Am I missing
This
a
happens,
joke?
David.
the thing to be said is we all love Carol Lipnick, regardless.
Yes.
There we go.
And she's amazing. She's amazing. And she said something very interesting to me, because I have this new show and I presented it 4 times, and I'm off to do it this week or next week in London twice. And Carol came to the second performance of it, and I saw her afterwards and I said, "Oh, it's very dark." She said, "I'm a creature of the darkness."
Yeah. She's a witch.
She's a witch. That's what I said to her. I said, "Oh, well, you're a witch." And she explores a lot of darkness in her work, but she also is able to really elevate into hopefulness somehow.
Yeah.
She has a real connection to the two. And as I've evolved the show, I'm attempting to find that same connection.
I want to talk about the workshop experience and like what the difference is between, you were talking about how you're doing it, all these performances, and you're working it out as you're doing it. What is that process like? And then where do you go after? Then
How do you know the workshop is over? How do you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I mean, I would say that my formative, not my formative, but my most recent and most impactful, salient experience around writing hour-length shows comes from my time in London when, over the past 23 years. And
why were you there, quickly?
I moved to London to get out of New York. I'd been in New York for a few years from San Francisco, and I just wasn't a right fit, and an opportunity came and I moved to London.
Great.
And while I was there, I really plunged into the stand-up comedy world. And that world in the UK is really oriented around the Edinburgh Fringe, the annual Edinburgh Fringe. And that's when comics go to Edinburgh and they bring an hour show and they set out their stall and perform and try and make their way into the industry and build an audience. And not everyone, and that model is a little bit breaking down, to be honest, but certainly in the 2000s and 2010s, that model was still valid. So I went multiple times. But what it means in London, and not just in London, but throughout the UK, is there's a lot of opportunity to do what we call whips, or work in progress. And that can be 30 minutes, that can be an hour, that can be 20 minutes. And that starts, the Edinburgh Fringe is August to September, the month of August. And whips for the next year start in September.
Yeah.
So people are already starting their next hour. They have an hour whip at some venue, and they just have little scratches of paper, little notes of paper just for that whole hour. And the point is that there's an audience for those development workshop shows and venues that are happy for you to go and just do what you want for an hour or 20 minutes, or 2 of you come together and each do a half hour, whatever it is. And so before I would go to Edinburgh, I would do my hour show like 30 times before even taking it to the Edinburgh Fringe.
Wow.
After it's been whipped.
Yeah. And that is the process of developing the show. And here in New York, I don't have that opportunity. I just haven't found, and I don't think there's the same kind of structure to develop an hour show cheaply and an audience will come. So I've used Pangea, and I did over the summer 3 shows where I invited guests on the show, and it was very informal and people could sort of do what they wanted. But still, it kind of, because that venue really only presents full shows. They don't really present things in development.
Right.
So it a little bit doesn't have the same flavor. You would, for a work in progress in London, oftentimes you'd pay nothing. You get
Interesting.
free.
So the audience just can come.
or pay what you want or what have you.
Right.
I mean, they realized, the venues realized they were investing in the future, right?
Exactly.
In every way.
I'm sure that people are drinking at least or something.
People
So
are
they're
drinking,
making
and the
some money.
venues are much more informal than the Pangea, than the kind of venues in New York where they're really set up to do a show. Sometimes you're in the corner of a pub, you know what I mean, with a microphone and 3 people listening.
Yeah.
Sometimes, so it can be a harrowing experience, some of these whips, believe me. But there are enough established places now that you can get in and develop your work over the year towards Edinburgh. You've done it 30 times. You're ready to go when you have to get to Edinburgh, and you do it every single day for a month for a paying audience. So even in 2023, when I had my show at Pangea, Glamour and Despair, much of that I had developed in London. So when I came and it opened in April 2023, a lot of it was pretty solid. I mean, I did write quite a bit. I would say maybe 45% of it was written.
Yeah, you rearranged some stuff too.
And we rearranged, and Peter helped me with that very closely. And we I wrote a lot of new jokes and things, and that evolved. But this show is already, in the 4 performances, already done a much greater evolution than I did in the 12 shows of Glamour and Despair. And I think it's going to continue. I mean, I'm excited where it is. And I'm excited to keep discovering where it's going to go.
I was talking to a friend about devised theater recently, and like that tends to be a problem that companies and individual artists face when they are part of a devised thing, is they just don't know where it's ending, because it's all about the devising, and they don't always know that's it. We're at the end of this devising. But also, Nancy, it's interesting, I guess, listener too. It's interesting that shows are quite literally titled, David Mills' Upside Down Cake, work in progress. Like, people are buying a ticket to go see a work in progress. And then I think about like folks like, Jerry Seinfeld, or anybody who, like, you always hear like, oh, they popped into this comedy club. They're doing that, right? They're working out bits.
Absolutely.
A lot of folks, I think, non-arts folks, or even folks who are not in the comedy world, there's this perception that comedy writers and comedians are sitting behind a desk and like writing all of these jokes and putting them in order. And like, I would gather that a tremendous amount of the writing is done on the spot, which is why people have to record shit, because otherwise...
Yeah, both things are true. And, some writers really are. And I think Jerry Seinfeld in particular does sit down and write. But then he takes that and has to do that on stage and sometimes find the joke. He thinks he has the joke. But once you get on stage, you realize, oh, that wasn't the joke I thought it was.
Yeah.
People are responding differently. And, oh, I see it. It reveals itself. Do you know what I mean? And so that's where I've been trying to develop work, is comedy clubs. But because I'm new in New York, my access to comedy stages is limited. And so often when I get to a comedy club, I want to smash it. I don't want to do new stuff because I want to impress them. I want to be invited back. So it's hard for me to weave in newer material because I want to make sure that I'm really bringing my A game. So I'm in this kind of challenging place to develop new work. And I'm a slow writer anyway, and I develop work really slowly anyway. So it's been an interesting period creatively, but a really good one. I'm really excited to be here and glad I'm in it,
What is the thing that you would like to most be doing? Is it you'd like to be doing your performances all over, like Hannah Gadsby, on stages all over, or did you want to act? Because I know you did some film stuff, which, by the way, I saw you in D.B. Cooper in that documentary.
Oh, right.
And I had no idea that was you.
Yeah.
So what is the ultimate life for you as a performer?
Well, I want to do it all,
Yeah.
I want to act, and had some success with that, but I want more. I'm hungry to do that, and that's a great film and TV because it's collaborative. So it's very different from what I do on stage, where it is also collaborative, but in a different way, film and TV. And stand up feels very solitary, and I want to continue with that, and I want to have success in that world. But I also really like this form that I've been doing for many years, this sort of alt cabaret, where I weave my comedy and stories into a kind of medley with music. And so I want to do all those things, and I want to write as well. And I want to do it all.
But you want to be in plays? I don't think you want to be in plays.
I would love to be in a play.
Oh, you would?
Happily. Yeah. I want to be I want a good part in a play. What terrifies me, what an actual nightmare of mine is that I would get a part what's like one line in a long running Broadway play.
Oh God.
And that would be my career. That you'd be
Right.
so close to it and yet so far away from what I want. That would be really terrifying. And I have total respect for people who take those roles. And I know there's a lot of value in that. You get a pension, you get, insurance, all that great stuff. Yeah, go for it. But I don't know how long I could manage that.
And for what reason? Is it an ego thing, or is it just that you'd be bored, or that you just want so much more?
Yeah, I'd be so bored. Like I want the creative creation part of acting.
Yeah.
If I just have one line that I repeat every single night,
It's just
7 or
work.
9 performances a week, then where's the creativity in that?
You know what you should do? You should create a show where the audience decides. Oh, that's my shows. I'm sorry. That would be. I
That
just
is
told someone recently, like, yeah, I'm moving towards a place where basically the audience just shows up and there actually is no art. There's no actor. There's no they just show. Like, I want to not be involved at all. Like, I
So
want
it's
to create.
really called show up. Show
Yeah,
up and
like
be
no,
the
I
show.
just think I start slowly and as I go along, the audience is creating more and more of the content of what my show is. So the next phase of that would be I don't even have to show up for it at all. The content is just created by people in a room going, "What the fuck is happening?"
Oh, that's a really great idea.
There's something similar to it already
Oh.
with the gorilla in the rocking chair show.
Yes. Do you not enjoy performing? However,
No, I do. This was a joke that I said to someone recently. Like, that's how my work is progressing. That it's getting to the point where I am writing so little of the content that eventually I don't even have to be there in the theater.
Right.
Which isn't bad. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to be sad about not a lot of seats sold.
Right,
You don't have
all
to run into your ex.
Yeah, all that.
Those are the only 3 things that would happen.
Well, I understand why you wouldn't want to do that. That's also I also don't want to do those things.
So are you a trained actor? Did you go to a theater conservatory or anything? How did this all start for you?
As a kid, I was in like local community theater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In Mountaintop, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, they had this big old broken down theater called the Little Theater. It was a big, big old building. And they would put on musicals. And I was in a number of those, small parts and things like that. It was all like people in their 40s.
But how did you know to be in them? Like, how did you even like?
Someone in the neighborhood got in one. And I was like, oh, I want to do that.
Oh,
So
wow,
I just-
all right.
You knew.
And then when I went to college, I went to UC San Diego, and they actually have a really good master's acting program, but their undergraduate program is just called theater, and you can sort of take some acting classes, but it's not like a proper acting conservatory by any means. And so I took classes there and majored in theater, and then I also majored in political science. And my dad used to say, "Oh, theater and political science, you could be the president."
Oh my gosh.
That was his big joke.
What kind of theater were you attracted to? Classics, comedy, what drama?
All of it,
Yeah.
really.
Wow.
I don't love and have never really been able to see myself performing like Greek theater.
Yeah.
Shakespeare, some of it I can get on board with, but a lot of it really I find very challenging. I mean, I understand it, but I just don't love it, I mean, of course we did things like, Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller and, Garcia Lorca and, all those, all that stuff that you read.
So from school?
From there, I did a class at the Groundlings.
That's smart.
2 seasons actually at the
Out
Groundlings
in LA.
in LA. Yeah, it was great. It was really great. Actually, that was before I did college.
Did you create characters in that workshop?
Yeah, it was really fun.
Like,
Really
Is that what the Groundlings does?
They taught initially the mechanics of improv, and there was a lot of games and things. And then you sort of slowly started writing little scenarios and creating characters. And I just got to that stage. And, they advance you through classes and you have to pay. And I had done 2 classes, and then it was time to go to college. And I thought, oh, maybe I should do the Groundlings. And my parents were like, you're going to college. So, but whatever.
I thought you were doing the Groundlings after college. This is impressive.
No, I did it before.
Like, you're just a kid.
Yeah, it was super fun and terrifying as well. Really.
Yeah. I find improv to be a little terrifying. Like, it's just not something that I embrace. And I actually think you have to be so super smart to be good at improv. You have to be
Yeah.
so quick and like you have to be on everything and unfettered. Everything has to be just completely open.
I'm not good at it. Yeah, I've not pursued it, and I'm not very, and it really terrifies me. I mean, I can in a stand-up situation, I can engage
Mm.
the audience, and
Yeah, you're good at that.
but I pretty much know where I'm taking them. I have enough. I've done it long enough that I have enough little cul-de-sacs I can take them in and shut it down. But I never just keep it wide open and let it just flow and keep going. You know, I want to get it back in control, back onto my script as quickly as possible.
Although it's very freeing when you do it and you can let go in that way. I think it's a really
Yes,
interesting thing for everybody to
it
try.
can be thrilling.
It's thrilling, yeah. When I'm writing music, it's completely open and I have no idea what I'm going to do, and it's all basically improv, right? If I'm writing a song, but there's something different when you're doing it as an actor, I find.
Doing it on stage. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You send out a great newsletter on a bi-weekly. Is it bi-weekly? I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying bi-weekly.
I I attempt to do it every other week.
It's a great newsletter, but it's not a newsletter that's talking about all of your trials and tribulations as an artist, which makes it refreshing. You talk about art and you talk about literature and you talk about film and social justice things and the arts. Totally, almost 99% more than you talk about your own thing, which is very rare. So it makes me wonder if you've ever thought about being a journalist. You love to ask people questions.
Yeah, I do. And it's a Substack that I have that I send as an email. It's called Quality Time. And it really is my little magazine. It's like me playing magazine editor. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I get to throw in a little bit about music, a little bit about politics, a little bit about,
art galleries
or celebrity homes or, kind of whatever I do, whatever I'm into at the moment, whatever I'm seeing on the street, and try and make it fun and entertaining and informative and provocative, So I would love to be like a Tina Brown, like an editor of some magazine and work with all these, come up with ideas for a magazine and write some and edit some. And yeah, sure.
Yeah. Is it too late to do that?
Well, magazines are dying. They're pretty much on their last legs.
Right.
But Substack isn't.
The way people do it now is via Substack.
You can monetize that, right? There's ways to do that, get subscribers. And how does one find your Substack?
They write Quality Time with David Mills into Google, and they'll find it there.
That was also the name of your podcast, wasn't it?
My podcast was called Focus People.
Oh, yeah.
And what was that about?
And that was a similar kind of thing. It was me inviting two people into a conversation. So I would have comics or a fashion designer I knew or a journalist or someone who was a researcher or an actor or, someone who owned a pub. I just would try and get two interesting people. And I'd say, you bring two things that you noticed this week, and I'll bring two things that I noticed this week. And we go around the room and have a conversation. And one person would say like, this was in London. Oh, Boris Johnson said the most outrageous thing, blah, 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 blah. And then the next person would say, my therapist reminded me that we haven't dealt with my mother. And then I would say, I've noticed on the street that people are wearing their collars up. This is a trend now. Have you noticed people are wearing their collars? So it was like just literally like.
I listened to that. I listened to all the episodes, but I do remember the one about the collar.
Yeah.
Is it still up now, or where was it?
Yeah, you can listen to it on Spotify.
Oh, good.
Yeah, super fun.
I don't know. I just like conversation.
What were the biggest challenges and the biggest rewards from doing that project?
Well, the biggest challenge that I always have with all my work, whether it's as a comic and a cabaret performer, whether it's my Substack or whether it's my podcast, is building and sustaining audience.
Yeah.
How do you think people do that?
I have a core of people who have been with me for over 20 years, and some shorter, but they consume everything I create. and I'm so grateful for them. But breaking out of that core has been my ultimate challenge. And I've seen so many performers come after me and been able to do it and rise past me.
How are they
And
doing it?
I just don't know. I mean, one of the things that you brought up, Peter, that is I observe about those artists that are able to do that well is they talk about themselves.
Yeah.
They
What do you
talk
mean?
themselves. Their work is about their experience.
Okay.
And my work is also about my experience, but behind many layers, many, many layers. I want to express my observations and my emotions through the art of talking about something else.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you stay with me and observe my work over time, you will see everything about me.
Right.
Peter knows it. But don't come the first time and think it's going to be a show about me or I'm going to be writing about me. You're going to get a flavor. And then over time, the next piece, you'll get another flavor. And then you'll begin to put together the pieces of the puzzle.
I'd say that's a very unique position.
I've never been an artist who's talked directly about my own experience. One time I wrote a show at the Edinburgh Fringe about my own experience and I hated it so much. Midway through the run, I stopped doing that show and just did all old material.
Oh my God.
And why do you hate it so much? Do you feel self-indulgent when you do that, or
I feel
what is it?
self-indulgent. I feel trite. I
Mhm.
feel artless. I feel hack.
Yeah.
I feel, it's not my style. And I observe other people do it really well. I don't want to take away from their skill and their
We know
artistry.
a lot of those people. That is their thing. Yes.
Yeah, and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
I think there is a skill to doing that. I talk about this workshop that I did quite a bit, and with Gretchen Cryer just recently about writing a one-woman show. And, one of her prompts at the very beginning, the first class, was about take something from your childhood and write a first-person story. And then she has us go away for 20 minutes and we would write it. And then afterwards, after doing 6 weeks of this, we were all doing a showcase of it. And I was like, I don't want to do this crap at a showcase. Like, this is ridiculous. It's so self-indulgent. And who cares about this? But what's really been happening, which is interesting, I actually am taking some of it and turning it into a show. But I've been doing every Sunday from 10 to noon. The group of us that were working in this particular workshop decided we were going to continue to meet and just spend 2 hours writing. And one of the guys, this guy, Jelan Lambert, started bringing us in prompts. So he'll come up with some weird story and then tell us all to, if we want, unless everybody can do whatever they want in that 2 hours. But if we want to use that prompt, and what I've done with the prompts is I've taken them as metaphors in a way into the stories that I'm writing, and it's made it so much more interesting. And I'm like, oh, I see a way of doing this with it being more artful and not as trite and not as self-indulgent. And then it makes the stories come alive in a whole different way.
Brilliant.
So I think there's a way to do it, especially like I don't particularly think I had some interesting life that most people are going to care about, right? So I want to find a way to talk about the stuff that I think is important and bring that in a way that's clever, I guess, is a way to put it.
Yes.
And I think that's our job is to find the way to bring humans in. I think we talked with Tony Bell about this, about your relationship to the audience, right? That you're being able to be with the audience and pull them in, because that's ultimately what it's about. So maybe that's our job, maybe that's why those people find a broader audience particularly.
Yes, I think they do. I think they do. I think they really are able to make their experience relatable. And what is so funny, Nancy, I also look at my life and think there's nothing there. Like, it's pretty average. Whatever my trauma or whatever I went through, people have been through many, many times. But you know what? That's the case with most people.
Yeah.
When you bring your sort of garden variety experience to the table, people are like, oh my God, I can relate to that. It doesn't matter that it's not extraordinary.
Yeah.
But then me as an audience member, I always sit there and watch those performances. And I always think, I'm as bored of your life as I am of mine.
But there is a pop music audience, right? There is an audience for the regular sentiment.
Yes.
And so and I do think that what makes it art for us and then what makes it wonderful for them is finding that balance and finding the magic. Like I think Carol is a really good example. Carol has found this way.
Carol Lipnick.
Carol Lipnick has found this way to create this beautiful life around her voice, which is also beautiful and something that we all can relate to. Now, it's an interesting challenge for her as well to find a broader audience, right? Because
Yes.
has a really great audience in the alt cabaret world, and trying to grab people like my family that are not necessarily in the alt cabaret mindset, you know?
Yeah, I'd say Tammy Faye's one of those people too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think both of them, particularly Carol, what she does is she casts a spell.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said she's a witch. Everybody says she's a witch because she does cast a spell over her
and
audience.
I think that's, you a little bit have to be open for any spell, right? You have to be open to it to be put in a trance. And I think unless you go in with that kind of openness, you're going to resist.
That's a really good point. I mean, I'm thinking now, like, right, who would I bring to her show? And then I think, who would I bring to your show? And then I think, I would go through my list of people, and not just people who are fun, but people who are open to things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, like, on Broadway, how much of the audience is open to things?
Okay, go watch Oh Mary. The audience is completely open. I've just had this conversation with my friend Andy, who's a phenomenal playwright and wrote this completely absurd piece. And he was wondering, well, who's going to want to watch it? And when you go watch Oh Mary, there's an audience for that for anything. It's just how well it's done.
Yeah, but you know what? That also works for Sunset Boulevard. It's like a classic musical theater, orchestrated whole thing. I'm not talking about the new one. I'm talking about the original one. That's great music. And I'd still have to find someone who was open to see that, to appreciate the traditional style of music that it is, and the traditional, it's a very traditional musical. It really is. It's not,
I haven't seen
not
it.
Les Mis, which is a little odd, I think.
I've had people, a close person in my life who I grew up with and hadn't seen me perform in a long time. And then I went back to San Francisco in June, and they love me and support me and want me to succeed and all this. And I did a show out there, and packed, sold out house. And it was a really great show, big laughs, big moments of drama, it really worked. I felt so thrilled, And afterwards, this friend of mine said, God, it was great. In a room of 55 people, like, loving it. He goes, I just don't know if there's an audience for it.
Ouch.
I guess you're right. Like, how am I supposed to feel when I have those moments where it really works? I'm like, oh, there's an audience for this. And then, but it never quite, I have a tough time breaking through to the next level, right? Like, oh, well, I've got to change it in some way, or I've got to do something else somehow. But it feels so successful in those moments. I think, like, well, why doesn't this just take off?
Yeah.
Right.
I do think there's something to be said for just trying as hard as you can to make something happen. We're doing that with this podcast, right? Hoping that we'll find an audience, a bigger audience than what we have right now, that will enjoy the podcast, right? I think that every project that you have, part of it, it's going back to that question about marketing, finding a way to market what you do, because I do believe there is something for everyone. And whether you want to have a mass audience, or if you're okay with a smaller audience, like I just went to see Hannah Gadsby and she filled up Abrams Music Hall a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, she should be at the Beacon, filling up the Beacon, because I think she's brilliant, right? But that's what she's doing right now, and growing and finding her audience. There are audiences for every kind of performance. It's just finding them and sticking with it sometimes.
Or is it audiences need to find you?
Well, yeah, it's
totally
you have
different. Finding the audience is like you are actively trying to figure out who your audience is and reach that audience.
Well, that's marketing,
you're
right?
doing something. Yeah. Or you are just existing and doing your thing, and the audience finds you. And you're like, well, how are these people? Where are they coming from?
It's
Yeah.
both.
That's the place we want to be, though. We want to be the place where they're finding us. We don't have to worry about all this freaking marketing stuff that's driving us crazy, trying to figure out who our audience is.
Or you have a budget for marketing people that do that for you.
It can be incredibly powerful when someone does discover you that you didn't know how they found you, and they just happened in there and they discover you and they really love what they found. And it's kind of an exciting moment because you discovered each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know there was anyone out there who would respond to this, and they didn't know that this was here to respond to. Those people can become major advocates of work, and I've had people like that in my life who discovered me out of the blue and have gone on to bring people and promote me to their circle.
I've been trying to get folks to go to the Jill Sobule show, Fuck Seventh Grade, which I saw for the third time this weekend.
That show.
And it was not a full house. I mean, it was only the second preview, but this is the third time around. It was a very small house. And there were these two young gays behind me and my friend who was visiting from the Ozarks. And so she was talking to them because that's what people from out of town do. And they had a nice little chat about this and that or whatever. And, we're excited for the show. Oh, it's starting. Great. So the show's over. And she's like, so how'd you like it? They were like, we had no idea that it was an autobiography. We didn't know it was real. And she told me that afterwards. And I said, why did you not find out? What was the moment? What moment in the show made you go, oh, this is a real person who's had a real career and who's had a real life experience? What was it?
I would love to know what.
I can't really tie that into the
show
conversation we were just having, but
I'm curious to know actually how they got to the show.
There we go. Yeah. So how did they come to the show? And all I could think of was these two gays were looking for something to do, and they came across a show called Fuck Seventh Grade. And what gay doesn't say that about seventh grade? No gay. They just went because they're gay.
We can't discount that. That's a huge audience. That's a huge audience of gays who they look and they say, what's Rainbow Drench? There's a rainbow flag up there.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. I'm not gay, and I love that fucking title. Fuck Seventh Grade. I felt the same way, and I fucking loved that show.
If it wasn't Jill Sobule, Fuck Seventh Grade, I might not be as interested. Her
you're right.
Quirky fairy, being makes me know that it's not an angry person.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I don't want to see that show.
But her specific journey around that song is very unique to her, right?
Yes.
So that's a particularly element that someone else couldn't bring if they were doing it.
Yeah.
But listen,
that's part of what makes it so special.
Yeah. And I think, for all of us, thank you for having me on this because it's so nice to be able to talk about this stuff. And you guys are so great and are open and intelligent people.
Peter's intelligent.
Well,
but I'm not open.
Okay, I'll be the open one, you be the intelligent one.
I think, it gets so pretentious to say this, but we're artists, for Christ's sake. Yeah. So what I want to do is keep making art. That's what I want to do. I just want to keep making art. And I don't want to care about the motherfucking audience. I just want to do what I do and make it better. And of course, I want an audience for it. But if the audience doesn't come, I'm not going to stop doing it.
But you don't want to work that hard. You don't want to have to work that hard for it. It's like, just fucking come.
No, it's different. David.
I am working hard.
No, I mean for the audience.
Trying to work on the fucking commerce of it.
Yeah,
that's what
David
I mean.
is very much like the artist from Tamar's movie. Why am I blanking on his name? Episode 3. Tamar.
Oh, Lynn Fowkes.
Lynn Fowkes, right? Lynn Fowkes is all about being in his studio all day long and obsessing over where this one tiny little piece of clay is going to go on this massive thing. This is what he wants. And Tamar's frustration was, why are you not putting this out there?
Right.
And this is so similar. And again, I don't assume everyone listening to this knows about comedy or the arts or art or what it is. And I think people think when you say you're an artist, it means you pick up a paintbrush in some way, and that makes you an artist. And I think we're talking about, and what it should be is artists is just creating things is art.
Exactly.
And there's this interesting thing that you're saying that I didn't ever put together with a visual artist, that it's this process that is the art and the thing that brings you so much fulfillment.
But that is what art is. Art, the joy of doing art.
Not for everyone. For
Not
some
for
people,
everyone.
it's the hearing the applause. It's the going on tour and playing to a sold out crowd. I mean, it's not everyone.
Listen, that has its value.
It's still an artist because you're a performer. That's the type of artist you are.
Well, wait a minute. the thing that we're missing is the elephant in the room and the title of the podcast, craft, right?
Right.
Craft. So you see this a lot in stand-up, right? There are these comics who want the special. That's in their mind what it means to be a stand-up, to get a comedy special. But they put no energy into the craft of stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
They just think, oh, just write some jokes and tell jokes. But there's a craft just like there is to anything. You can succeed without craft, and a lot of comics do.
Of course.
I'm not interested in that comedy.
Yeah.
I'm interested in comics who are craftspeople.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in the musicians who are craftspeople, and actors who are craftspeople, and artists who are craftspeople, because that's the kind of art I like. That's crafted.
And that's the joy of making art. Like for
Exactly.
me, the joy is finding that word, finding that story, finding whatever it is. Like that's why, to me, and we were talking about this with, I think it was Jerry Linus, where you can get lost for hours when you're creating, have no idea, no concept of time, because you're in it.
Yeah.
And it is being in the moment. When you're creating and you're in that space, there is almost nothing like it. It's like sex. It is so, except it lasts longer, right? It's so wonderful.
The other element that I really get a kick out of is when I really see the benefit of the years and years and years of practice that come from craft, and being with your craft over and for decades, and playing shitty rooms and big rooms and terrible gigs and good gigs, and and all those skills. And then you're in a moment and all of a sudden someone, a heckle comes. Well, don't worry, baby. I have been in this moment before. I've got the response. Boom. There it is. I handle it and move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those moments come. And Peter, I see it with you and all the shows that you've done that are improv shows over the years. Your craft just gets sharper and sharper and sharper and better and better and better. And, you must as well, Nancy, composing, you look at the work that you made 20 years ago, and now you look at the work today and you say, well, I'm only able to make this work today because I put in the 20 years of work
Yes.
to get to where I am. I did all that crafting to get to where I am. That's to me what it's about.
And that's the battle that we face, is finding a way, especially in a society that does not support art, and it's getting worse and worse, except for some art, but finding the way to have an audience help us exist doing our art, instead of us having to do side gigs or whatever it is that we're doing, or taking jobs that we don't really want, work for hire gigs that we may or may not want, but we have to do because that's what keeps us fed. And I don't know if audiences really understand enough of what their responsibility to art is. I think that's sort of a battle in our society, right?
Yeah.
And so it's time to educate the audience. Maybe that'll be one of our episodes, is how to educate an audience to appreciate what artists do, and what we go through. And, it's fun. Yes, we are so lucky because we get to do this and we have the talent to do it, but it's work.
Yeah. And it's not always fun.
Right.
It's not always fun. I mean, no one's career is always fun. No one's art is always fun. That's beside the point. Fun comes on times, and it's great when it is fun, but that's not why I'm in it. I think that's what audiences think. They think you are just doing something. You're just following your fun.
Yes. Because it's so much fun and it's so easy, and you don't want to work for a living.
Listen, fun, and they have fun when they enjoy it, but they don't. Yeah. That doesn't just come from somewhere. I have this friend who's a choreographer, and he's 60, maybe 60 or 61. And he just did a piece upstate, and I went. He's based in London, but he was in San Francisco for many years. And I've seen his work for years. Big dance companies, small pieces, solo work, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, he did this piece at this, have you heard of the O Positive Festival in Kingston?
No, but that is my blood type, though, if anyone's interested.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
They bring artists for this festival annually, and they don't pay artists. They pay them in medical procedures.
Oh.
So you can get your teeth cleaned, or you can get Botox, or blah, 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 all these different things. And, their headliner was Nico Case.
Wow.
And,
what'd she get done?
I don't know. Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Google a picture of her to see.
That's where my brain goes. What'd she get done?
So this choreographer, his name is Stephen Pelton. He's a great, great choreographer, and he did his work. And afterwards I said to him, and again, it was like maybe there were 50 people in the room, some shitty town, not a very nice town, but like some way off the map. No one's paying attention to this festival and all this stuff. And I just was so blown away by the piece. I said to him, it's so mature. Your work is so mature. What a huge success this is. And some people could look and say, God, he's been in the business all this time. He's playing this shitty little festival no one's heard of. That's not a success. Of course it was a success.
Yeah.
The work had grown and developed over all these many years, these decades. And now he was presenting something so incredibly refined and beautiful and soulful. And all his vocabulary was there, that I'd seen for many, many years, but done in such a really compelling and refreshing way. And I was just like so blown away and so moved by that, not just the piece, but his journey as an artist, And I think that to me, that's the kind of audience that I would love, like people who've been with me a long time, who see the journey I'm on, who can say, oh, I see what you're doing now and where it's come from and how it's evolved over these years and how you've gotten better and all that stuff, It feels like getting audience is constantly being a new artist. And I mostly want people who know my work. Do you know what I mean? And can engage with me about, so self-indulgent, but can engage with me about this whole journey I'm on, as opposed to like, that was a great piece. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference. There's a difference.
I want both. I want people to have been on the journey, and then I want it to grow with people that don't know me and go, and now we're on the journey.
Yes.
And we're on the journey. I think that's important. That's how you grow your audience and how it continues, It's a journey. And it is harder when it depends on what level you're at and what you're able to achieve. It's an interesting journey being an artist and being at a level where you haven't achieved massive success. I think that makes it harder for us because there's so much talent and so much work that needs to be seen, and heard.
I always say, welcome to what it means to be an American artist in 2024. This is the majority experience. Yeah. The ones that have broken out of this space, that's a tiny portion of all the artists out there been working, sticking to it, developing their craft, evolving, making interesting work, failing, succeeding. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Yes, I want it to go bigger. Yes, I want to break through. But if it doesn't, I still believe that I've made quality work, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quality time, David. Yeah. Quality time.
I want to ask one question before we let you go, because it's we don't want to take too much of your time. Do you know your blood type?
I don't.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.